Hey, so I'm going to talk about some more stuff, but it's not scripted. I'm going to do some more history and background on where Gamergate comes from, really, and where this whole conflict, of which Gamergate is merely a part, stems. But it's unscripted. I've got a few notes over here so I can go through. But yeah, hopefully this will be educational. So, you could go back a really long way, but let's start in the middle of last century. In 1954, Frederick Wortham published Seduction of the Innocent, which was a book about the nefarious and pernicious influence of comic books and how evil and bad and wrong they were, and how they were leading the youth astray with sexual imagery and horror, scenes of horror, crime, and so on. This was, of course, complete bollocks, but he tapped in to a kind of moral panic, a level of concern. And as a result, we got the Comics Code, which was a voluntary-ish way of controlling what appeared in comics. Now, prior to the Comics Code, there was a huge, wide plethora of comics and pulps dealing with all manner of subjects, some of them quite adult, some of them not. There was lots of speculative science fiction, there were black heroes, there were probably gay heroes. There was all sorts, there was a huge swathe, so even if the majority of it was, if you like, if you want to call it that, exploitative trash, there was a huge variety. After the Comics Code, comics became infantilized, and it took quite a while, probably the underground comics of the 70s, to counter that, and then after that you probably didn't really see any genuinely adult comics until Alan Moore stuck his head over the parapet. But anyway, the point is, you had a moral panic, people came in trying to protect others from content, and as a result you ended up with less diversity and less good art, and that's kind of the pattern. It's worth noting, 1957, on the Ed Sullivan Show, Elvis was only filmed from the waist up because it was worried about that his swivelling hips would incite the youth. Let's jump ahead a bit. 1983, I think, bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. Pat Pulling, poor lady, her son committed suicide. She looked around for something to blame, found D&D, and decided to have a go at that. Then around the whole same time we had the Satanic Panic, entirely made up, and the idea that D&D and other pastimes somehow brought people into Satanism, whether that means anything at all. And otherwise led them astray again and encouraged violence and meant people couldn't tell the difference between reality and fantasy, and there were studies done and that was pretty much the opposite of what was true, as it turned out. But that didn't stop a load of problems. It didn't stop self-censorship in one of the monster manuals, and the echoes of that concern from the mid-80s come right the way through to today, and have made the tabletop gaming industry paranoid about being criticised and worried about doing anything challenging or interesting, and very, very sensitive to criticism, none of which has particularly helped the artistic side of that, in my opinion. I don't think censorship ever does. So let's skip forward to 1990. That was the Judas Priest trial, and that was part of the same kind of problems that hit tabletop gaming at the time. It was thought that backmasking messages were telling kids to shoot their parents or commit suicide or whatever, and again, two people unfortunately took their own lives with a shotgun, and the parents cast about for something to blame, and they settled on heavy metal music. But yeah, this is a common theme. Going ahead a bit more, 1997, that was the start of Jack Thompson's career. Now, Jack Thompson kind of tapped into more moral panic about computer games. I don't think he was genuine. I think he was just cashing in. I think he was using people's concerns and disgust and upset in order to line his own pocket. But he still made a pretty good career out of it, despite getting a lot of backlash from gamers. Yeah, for a while there, he got a lot of mileage out of it, and his concerns and the concerns of parents groups and so on were taken, fairly seriously. And same sort of time as that, maybe a bit later, there was Tipper Gore worried about rap music and heavy metal, and that's why we have those parental advisory explicit lyrics stickers on things to this day. And what did that do? Fuck all, really. It acted as a way of selling more records, if anything, because kids love something that's a bit naughty. 1999, of course, we had Columbine, which people attempted to blame on Doom, amongst other things, trench coats, goth music, yeah, you name it. A bit later than that, we had the vampire murders, which people tried to blame on Vampire the Masquerade, which was an echo of the 80s nonsense as well. Alright, well, let's move into the 2000s. And what do we find? 2008 was when the extreme porn ban was brought in the UK. Now, what is extreme porn? Nobody really seems to know. Like, nobody really seems to be able to define obscenity or pornography. Obscene porn seems to be even consensual BDSM, or even consensual non-consent, as some people call rape play, and that sort of thing. Fantasy. Some of it is even more vanilla than that. Some of it seems to have been applied to cartoons and comic strips and manga, lolly stuff. You name it. They're applying it to the fantastical and the made-up and the fictional, and even a guy who engaged in consensual sadomasochistic acts and took pictures of him and his boyfriend engaged in these acts. He was charged with possessing extreme porn that he'd made himself of him and his friend for private consumption between them. I think he got off. Check out Obscenity Lawyer on Twitter if you want to follow up more on this sort of thing. 2013, that's when the compulsory porn filter was brought in the UK, and that was largely promoted by feminist groups and the likes of Gail Dines, and has basically made you say, yes, I want porn to your company. It's kind of intruding on people's privacy, in my opinion. And that brings us round to Gamergate. So what is the common thread here? What is going on, and why is this different? Is it different? The common thread through all of these things, in my opinion, is that people are mistaking their own personal taste, upset, and the fact that they're offended. They're mistaking that for some kind of deep societal issue that needs solving. So, I think we can all recognise that it's ridiculous when, say, the Westboro Baptist Church talks about the gay agenda, or that sort of thing. It's obviously bullshit. They're talking about basic equal rights and freedom of expression and freedom to express love for each other and freedom to gather and freedom to be yourself. And they're objecting to it on religious grounds. And I think most of us can recognise that that is toss. And it doesn't take much explanation to point that out. For some reason, when the objections become ideological, and I don't want to just limit it to social justice warrior issues, but those are the ones I know best. So, if you're objecting to skimpy outfits in a fantasy world on the basis of feminism, that is toss as well, because it's fiction. It's not real. It's not kosher, and we're not living in a monoculture. There are other games, there are other media you can consume if that's not your thing, and you're mistaking your offence for some deep societal problem that needs addressing. And that's no different to Frederick Wortham, that's no different to Pat Pulling and Bothered Against Dungeons and Dragons, it's no different to what Jack Thompson pretended to be, and it's no different to what the God Hates Fags people want to be. If you censor or cause to self-censor creative artists, you're going to end up with less diversity, not more, and you're going to damage and harm art. And yes, I genuinely do believe that games are art. So just stop. Stop it. Fuck off and make your own stuff that you want to see, that you want to play, that you want to read, and leave everyone else alone to make what they like. You know, that there's room in this world for both Anal Rampage 7 and the piano to exist in the cinema. And neither one does any harm to the other, and the existence of one has no meaning or bearing for the other. Right? Enjoy what you like, and stop fucking with people's chi. Peace.